The hotel lobby buzzed with quiet conversations and the occasional clink of glasses. I stepped inside, exhausted from the long day, craving nothing more than a drink before heading to my room. The bar, dimly lit with soft jazz playing in the background, felt like the perfect place to unwind. As I approached the counter, I scanned the room absent-mindedly, my gaze landing on a woman sitting alone at the far end. Her elegance stood out, not just in the way she carried herself, but in the quiet confidence she exuded. I recognized her instantly. Mrs. Evelyn. The realization sent a jolt through me. She wasn't just any woman. She was the pastor's wife. The same woman who sat in the front row every Sunday, poised and graceful, always standing beside her husband as he preached about love, loyalty, and faith. What was she doing here alone, in a place like this? For a moment, I considered turning back, pretending I hadn't seen her. But then our eyes met. Her lips curled into a subtle, knowing smile as she lifted her glass slightly in acknowledgement. There was no hesitation in her gaze, no trace of discomfort. I hesitated, unsure of the right move. But the way she looked at me, it wasn't the glance of a woman caught in the wrong place. It was an invitation. I took a breath and walked over. Mrs. Evelyn. I greeted cautiously, taking the seat beside her. She chuckled softly, swirling the wine in her glass. Evelyn, she corrected. Let's not make this formal. Her voice was different, lighter, unrestrained, unlike the measured tone she used at church. The contrast unsettled me. What brings you here? Asked, keeping my tone neutral. She exhaled, her gaze drifting to the drink in her hand. Sometimes, I just need a place to breathe. She looked back at me, her expression unreadable. You ever feel that way? Like the world expects something from you, but deep down, you're not sure if it's really you? Her words caught me off guard. This wasn't small talk. It was a confession wrapped in a question. I nodded slowly. I guess we all have moments like that. A brief silence settled between us. The ice in her glass clinked as she took another sip. I know this must seem strange to you, she admitted, eyes locked onto mine. But I'm just a woman, outside of that church. A woman who sometimes needs to step away. I didn't know how to respond. This was uncharted territory. Sitting here with her, hearing this side of her, one no one else probably saw, it felt like being let into a secret. She leaned forward slightly. Stay a while, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I swallowed hard. This was dangerous. But for some reason, I couldn't bring myself to leave. I shifted in my seat, gripping my glass tighter than necessary. Evelyn's presence was disarming, her words laced with a vulnerability I hadn't expected. She wasn't just making conversation. She was revealing something deeper, something that felt almost forbidden. You ever wonder what life would be like if things had turned out differently? She asked, her gaze locked onto mine. I hesitated, unsure how to answer. I think everyone does at some point. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I used to believe in fairy tales. That love was about devotion, sacrifice, and faith. She let out a soft, humorless laugh. But sometimes, love feels more like a cage than a blessing. I stiffened. This was more than just small talk. I'm sure Pastor loves you, I said, careful with my words. She studied me, as if deciding whether to tell the truth or keep up the illusion. He loves the idea of me, the perfect wife, the devoted woman who stands by his side, always nodding, always smiling. She looked down at her glass. But does he really see me? I felt the weight of her words. She wasn't asking me for advice. She was looking for understanding. I think people get so used to a version of someone that they forget to ask if they've changed, I offered. Her lips parted slightly, like I had just spoken something she had been waiting to hear. She reached out, her fingers brushing mine lightly. You understand, don't you? The touch was brief, barely there, but it sent a current through me. I should have pulled away, should have reminded myself who she was. But I didn't. I don't know what to say, I admitted. Her expression softened. You don't have to say anything. Just be here. A strange tension hung between us. It wasn't just the setting, the dim lights, or the wine. It was the fact that we both knew this conversation wasn't innocent. This was a line neither of us should be crossing, yet neither of us made a move to stop it. She tilted her head slightly, studying me. You're different from the others. You don't judge. I let out a slow breath. Maybe because I know how it feels to be misunderstood. She nodded, as if she had expected that answer. Then maybe we both needed this moment. The air between us felt charged, unspoken words hanging heavily. I wasn't sure what was happening, but I knew one thing. This night wasn't going the way I had expected, and I wasn't sure if I wanted it to stop. I could hear my own heartbeat, steady yet unrelenting, as the silence between us deepened. Evelyn's fingers traced the rim of her glass, her gaze distant, as if weighing the gravity of this moment. There was no doubt about what was happening, an unspoken shift that neither of us dared to fully acknowledge. You know, she said, her voice softer now, I never imagined I'd be sitting here, having this kind of conversation. I forced a small smile. Neither did I. She exhaled, leaning back slightly. Marriage isn't what people think it is. It's not just love and commitment. It's expectation, duty, and 1,000 unspoken sacrifices. Her words lingered. I wanted to challenge them, to tell her that love, real love, was supposed to be different. But who was I to question her reality? I'm not unhappy, she continued, as if answering my unspoken thoughts. I just sometimes feel invisible. I swallowed hard. And tonight you don't. Her eyes met mine, holding them a little too long. No, she admitted. Tonight, I feel seen. Her confession sent something sharp through me. I wasn't blind to what this meant, to the edge we were standing on. But I couldn't ignore the pull, the weight of her presence pressing against the lines of morality and restraint. She shifted slightly, her knee brushing against mine. Would it be so wrong, she murmured, to just exist in this moment? The question hung in the air like a challenge, daring me to respond. I knew the right answer. I knew what I should say. But the way she looked at me, the way her lips parted just slightly, the way the warmth of her presence lingered so close, made it nearly impossible to pull away. I don't think it's that simple, I finally said. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Nothing ever is. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The sounds of the bar faded into the background, the world narrowing to just this space between us. My mind screamed at me to leave, to break whatever this was before it became something irreversible. But she reached out again, this time letting her fingers rest lightly on my wrist. Stay, she whispered. The single word carried weight, not just in its meaning but in the way she said it, with vulnerability, with something dangerously close to longing. I stared at her hand against my skin, feeling the war within myself unfold in real time. I had a choice. And no matter which path I took, nothing would ever be the same again. The air felt heavier now, charged with something unspoken yet undeniable. Evelyn's hand remained on my wrist, her touch light but deliberate. I could still walk away, and this before it crossed into something we'd both regret. But the way she looked at me, like she was waiting for me to make the choice for both of us, made it nearly impossible. I don't know if this is a good idea, I said, my voice quieter than before. She didn't pull away. Does everything have to be a good idea? The way she said it, with the hint of sadness beneath her words, made my stomach tighten. I wasn't just sitting here with a woman looking for excitement. She was searching for something deeper, something missing in her life. And somehow, in this moment, she thought she had found it in me. But I wasn't sure if I was ready to carry that weight. I slowly pulled my hand back, watching the way her expression flickered, just for a second, with disappointment. This isn't fair, I finally said. She tilted her head slightly. To who?
To you. To him.
To us. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but no words came. Instead, she let out a slow breath, her fingers retreating to her lap. I should go, I murmured. She nodded, though there was something reluctant in her eyes. I understand. But as I stood, preparing to walk away, she spoke again. I wasn't trying to make you responsible for me. I turned back to her, uncertain what to say. She gave a small smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. I just wanted to feel like a person again, even if just for one night. The weight of her words settled deep in my chest. I understood now. This wasn't about betrayal or temptation. This was about loneliness. A woman who had spent years as a symbol instead of a person. A woman who just wanted to be seen. I hesitated, then gave a small nod. You are a person, Evelyn. For the first time that night, her expression softened, like those words meant more than I could possibly understand. I turned and walked away, the echo of our conversation following me long after I had left.